Hi everyone, in this video we will talk about null safety. If you know nothing about null safety, I would like to start by explaining what null is. Null basically means nothing, empty, no value assigned to a variable. You know that in your apps you need to create variables to store data in. Well, if you don't initialize them properly and put a value into those variables, then they will contain null. They will not have a value, and so yeah, if you don't properly handle that thing in your code, then things can go wrong. So when you then try to call these variables or call methods upon them, things will go wrong. If, for example, you have a string and your string is empty and you want to know the length of it, then you will get an exception in your code saying method not exist or something like that. In the past, you probably also have seen like null reference exceptions and stuff like that. So that all has to do with that kind of thing. Okay, so later we'll also look at some examples so you can see what it is. So you may also think that in some cases your variable actually needs to be null. Like for example, if you have some code and you need to store a value and like a landline number and people don't have a landline number, then your variable must be null, right? So that's correct. And Dart also has some way to support null values. Dart introduced null safety from version 2.12, and types in your code, they are non-nullable by default. So it means that they need to have a value. There are nullable counterparts for these types, and we'll also look at those things in a few examples later on. Okay, so let's maybe jump into a quick example to see what can happen in your code. First of all, as I said, Dart introduced null safety from version 2.12. And if we want to replicate an example, we first need to go to the pubspec YAML file, which is over here. And here you can see the version that I'm currently using. And we need to go back a little bit in time to version 2.10.0. And let's save this. So now I'm actually working with an older version of Dart in my code, just to show you a quick example of this. All right, let's go back to my file here and let's do some testing here. So let's say that I have a function. Let's create a function. We'll create a function called divide by 2, and we'll pass in a value to our function. And the only thing what this will do is it will return the value divided by 2. There we go. And now we will print a line here where we say, okay, divide by 2, and we'll give it a value of 3. And let's see if everything is working. So there you go, 1.5, that's good. Now let's try something else. Let's try to call our divide by 2 function on null. So this is the first time where we see null, and you can also use this in this way, and it really means nothing. And as you might expect, you can't really divide null by 2. So this will probably give an error. Let's have a look. And there you go. So here it says no such method error, meaning yeah, you can't divide null. Basically, that's what it's saying. Okay, so let's look at something else. Let's say that you don't have a requirement for a nullable type. You do have a requirement, excuse me. And as I said before, Dart has nullable counterparts for variables. Let's show you some example what I mean with that. So let's say that we have an int, my int, let's call it that, which is 3. So the nullable counterpart for that would be int, and we add a question mark behind it here, my nullable int, and I can assign null to this here, and it will not give me any problem. That is, at least if we upgrade our pubspec YAML file back to a higher version. So let's go back to our pubspec YAML file, and I'm just gonna revert this change over here. And now you will see that it doesn't give me any error anymore. And this is now my nullable int. So this is the non-nullable type version of int, let's call it that. And this is the nullable version of the int type. Okay, and we can do some other examples as well. Let's say double, for instance, my double, say 3.4. There we go. And we also have a nullable version of that here, my nullable double, and I can also assign null to that. So the important thing, of course, is that you handle these nullable types. So your code will not run into problems once you execute it. Dart is a smart programming language though, and a Dart analyzer will scan your code before compilation and let you know that you didn't properly handle the nullable type. For example, let's add a nullable string to our example here. My string, let's just call it that because we don't have a different string here, and do something like this. And now if I want to print out something on that string, like a method for instance, and I want to call the length function to see how long this string is, what will happen here is the error message says me that you can't call the length function because it's possible that my string is null, and then our code will run into problems. So we need to fix that, and we need to properly assign a value. The good thing though is that this code will not even run, because in the development mode, which we're currently in, we already see that there's an error and we need to fix that. So another thing that I want to talk about is type promotion. When you assign a value to your nullable string, Dart will change that type from being a nullable type to a non-nullable type. This is called type promotion. It will only do that when it has completely analyzed your code and it's absolutely sure that there's no possibility that your string will contain a null value. Let's have a look at an example. Okay, so as we saw here is that this didn't work, right? So let's try to make sure that we put something in our string. So let's say that I enter here my string, and I will give it something like love this channel. I hope you do. And now you will see that my error message goes away. Dart actually promoted my string to the non-nullable string version, and it can safely compile this code and we will not run into any errors. The next thing I want to look at are the null-aware operators. Dart has several different operators which are specifically developed to handle the null values. Let's look at the first one, which is the if null operator. So let's clean up my code here a little bit so we can enter something else. There we go. Let's start again with our nullable string. There we go. And let's try to print this string again. So let's first do this maybe. As we have talked before about nullable and non-nullable types, this is a nullable type because of this question mark here. And if I would print this, the result would be, let's have a quick look, the result would be null. So we know that this is an empty or null string. Now, if we want to handle that, let's say that we don't want to have that null, we can use the if null operator. So you can put here 2 question marks. This is the operator. And you can say that, okay, if my string is null, then use different value that I'm going to say here, like, I love this channel. And if we run this code, it will not present us with null anymore. It will show this I love this channel message. Let's run our code. There you go. So this is a very handy way to handle that null value in your variables. The next thing that we are going to have a look at are the null-aware assignment operator. This operator checks if a variable contains null, and if it does, it will assign a value to it. Okay, so let's just put a comment here that we know that this is our if null operator. The next thing that we are gonna have a look at is our null-aware assignment operator. And let's have a quick look at this. So we will print out my string again. And the change that we will do here is we will use this operator, and please subscribe to my channel. There we go. And what will happen here is that it will not only contain the new message now, but if we print our string again, it will not be null anymore. It will contain this message. So what we will see now is that it will print out this message 2 times. Let's have a quick look. As you can see, it says I love my channel from here. And here it actually assigns this value to my string because we know that it is null. And we prove that by printing that message one more time. All right, let's have a look now at the next one, which is the null assertion operator. Okay, so with the null assertion operator, when will you use this? Sometimes you know that something will not be null once you are running the code. And for this we have the null assertion operator, or it's also called the bang operator. Let's have a quick look at an example here. Let me first... Oh, assertion operator. There we go. Maybe let's just also put these here just for reference sake. There we go. Okay, so let's do something else here. Let's create like a quick weather check. Let's say, okay, this is a function that will return a bool, and it can be 0. So is it warm or cold? And we'll pass in a double, which can also be a 0 of the temp. There we go. And let's say, okay, if the temp is above, if the temp is above 30, we can safely conclude that it is warm and will return true. Else, return false. Okay, there we go. So the first thing that we see here is that it is showing me an error message. Here we can use the null assertion operator by saying, okay, we know that temp, I know that we can pass it as a null value, but we are absolutely sure that it will not be null. So what you can do is you can use the operator here, and the error message will go away. Now let's do some testing. Okay, let's say check 1, for instance, is it warm or cold? And we're gonna pass the temp of 35 degrees Celsius in this case. And you will see that it has the same problem here because it's complaining here again. What we can do now is we can also add the exclamation mark here at the end, and now the error goes away. Another thing that you can also do is let's create another check here, check 2, with the same method and just pass it a parameter. We can also say that we want to return this as a bool, and then the problem will also go away. And the last thing what we can do is use the if null operator as we did in our previous example. Let's say check 3, for example, and we'll say is it warm? Okay, with the same temperature just for testing purposes. And here we can then use our if null operator and say, okay, if it might be null, then we can return true. There we go. So those are some examples of using the null assertion operator. Then the next one is the null aware cascade operator. Okay, so let's put here the null aware cascade operator, and that looks like this. And for this I need to create some extra classes. Let's do something fun here. Let's create a new class here at the bottom. Class, for instance, cognac, which I like. Let's give it a property string brand, and then also a string with the volume, something like that. And then let's create 2 instances of this class. There we go. And now we can use the cascade operator to set the properties, and we use it like this. And we say, okay, the brand, for example, Hennessy, and the volume will be 70 centiliters. There we go. And let's now also create another cognac of type class, and this can actually be nullable. My cognac 2. Let me think a little bit. Okay, so this can be null, and what we'll do now is for this we can use the null aware cascade operator, and we use it like this. And if I would do this, it would give me, let's have a quick look here, and the volume, it's the same, 70 centiliters. There we go. And here you will see that it gives me an error now. And how we can fix that is with the null aware cascade operator. So we add question mark here, and then our error goes away. So that's how you use that. The next one is the null aware index operator. Let me first put the comment here as I did before. And we write it like this. So the null aware index operator is used to access elements from a list that is potentially null. So we need to create a list first. Let's say that we want to create a list of integers, and this list can be null. It can't contain a null value. It can only contain ints, but the list itself, it can be null. So let's give it a name and we'll put some values in here, 2 or 3. We can do it like this. And then we have a list with some integers. And this is also possible because we said that this list could contain null, right? Another thing that we can do is also create a second list. I just want to show you this real quickly. And if I write it like this, and it looks a little bit funny, some more values. Now, actually, your list can contain the value of null. There we go. So if I would try to do that here, that would not work because it's not an int. There we go. So, and if we then want to get an element from that list, let's look up this here. Then we have to use our null aware index operator, and we do it like this. So I want to get the second item from that list. And as you see here, it says that the receiver can't be null. So the null aware operator is unnecessary. And why is it showing me this message here? Because actually the Dart analyzer already knows that there are going to be values inside this list. It will not be null, so it says that this operator is not required here. What we can do is we can also change this here to null again, and then the message will go away because it will know that this is actually null. So this null aware index operator actually isn't such a bad idea. I think that's it for the null aware index operator that I wanted to talk about. Then the next one is also the last one, which is the null aware spread operator. So the spread operator is used to join lists together, right? And the null aware spread operator, as you might have guessed, it's a way to handle a possible list which is null, and if you want to use that in a spread, it will not blow up your application. So let's have a quick look at the last null aware operator, and that's the null aware spread operator, and it looks like this. There we go. So for this we need to have some lists. For example, again, let's create some cognacs, and in this list I'm gonna put the Hennessy again and also the Remy Martin. There we go. So this is my first list, and I also like to drink some gin now and then. So let's also create a list with some gins here. Monkey 47 is quite good, and also Gin Mare is also a very good gin. There we go. So now we have two lists, and let's also create an empty list, which is vodka, which I don't really drink that much. There we go. And now let's try to join these lists with the spread operator. So I'm gonna create a new list, my drinks, and let's, for instance, put beer in this list, which is also something that I like now and then. And then we're gonna use the spread operator to add the cognacs in there. We are also gonna add the gins in there. And we then finally are gonna add the vodka in there. And this is not gonna give me an error. Alright, so that's it for the null aware operators. The last thing that I want to talk about is the late keyword. So there may come a time that you want to work with non-nullable types, but you can't immediately initialize them. We'll look at an example in a bit. And for this, I'm gonna use my weather function here again. So let's say the late keyword here. And I'm gonna create a bool, a final bool, warm or cold, and I'm gonna call the is warm or cold function here. Actually, let me do something else here with the weather function. Let's create a new class, for instance, weather news, something like that. And we are gonna initialize the temperature, which is something that I'm gonna need. Let me first create my variables here. Let's call a final double temperature. There we go. And also a final bool. Let's take this one from here. There we go. Final bool, warm or cold. And let's call our initializer here. This temperature. There we go. And then we need to have this function in there. And then I want to call that on temperature. And let's this here. So this looks about right. Now, the problem here is that it says the instance member, is it warm or cold, can't be accessed in an initializer. So we can fix this by adding the late parameter here. By giving it the late keyword, we tell Dart that all is good and the value will come in eventually at runtime. The value is then not initialized right away, but it will be initialized once we access the warm or cold property in this case. This is also called lazy initialization. And the big advantage of lazy initialization is that your code is more performant, because the initialization work is done only when you actually access the variables. Let's say, for instance, that this is it warm or cold method here is something which requires a lot of computation. Then we would only be doing that if we access this variable. So that means that your code will be more performant that way. So let's finish off this example here by creating an instance of our weather news function here. Weather today. There we go. Weather news, and let's give it a temperature of 31.6. There we go. And if we then run this code, oh yeah, so there's still something wrong here. Let me just comment out because we removed the function there. Looks good. And all is good. So that's it for the null safety. I know it was a bit of a longer video, but there's a lot of stuff we covered here. We talked about the late keyword. We talked about the null aware operators. and we also talked about the concept of null safety. I hope it was informative, this video. If you have any questions about this topic, let me know. And if you like this content, please subscribe to my channel. Please like the video, click the bell icon. That would be, I would really like that. It also motivates me to create more videos. So thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.